Hello, I'm Mrs Ezard and I'm head teacher at Windlesham Village Infant School. The purpose of this video is to explain our recent Ofsted inspection, what the findings were, and talk that through with you. So in 2019 a new inspection framework was introduced with a much bigger focus on the whole curriculum, what the school teaches and why the school sequences the learning in that way, what we want the children to achieve. The criteria of outstanding has changed considerably since the school was given outstanding in 2006. These days it's much harder to get the judgment of outstanding, and a school would have to be exceptional in every area of the inspection to be given that grading. Safeguarding is either judged as effective or ineffective. So the areas for inspection are quality of education, behaviour and attitudes, personal development, leadership and management, and safeguarding. These are the grades that the school would be given: outstanding, good, requires improvement, inadequate. So for each area of the inspection, you are given a grade. So first of all, to behaviour and attitudes, which was deemed to be good by the inspection team. It was very evident to the inspection team that the children behaved well in class and around the school. They saw a consistent approach across the school from all members of staff. The children know what's expected of them. There are high expectations of the children, clear routines, and positive behaviour for learning. There's a clear behaviour policy and the culture is apparent. There's a very positive ethos and a consistent approach. The majority of pupils behave well, and that small minority that were seen not to be on task at certain times in the lessons were very quickly brought back on track by a look or a gesture from the teacher or teaching assistant so that they could refocus on their learning. At break time and lunchtime, the children were seen sat chatting and playing nicely. In terms of the relationship between the staff and the pupils, there's clear mutual respect. The children said there's very little bullying at the school and very, very little name calling. They were quick to tell the inspectors that if there was any name calling, an adult would sort it out very quickly. So this is what was said about children's behaviour and attitudes. In terms of their personal development, again, we were given the grade of good. Between staff and pupils, there are respectful relationships. The children feel safe and well cared for, and it's okay to be different. Bullying is very rare. There was effective pastoral support for the pupils. The current value at the time of inspection was the value of respect, and the assembly for the children that afternoon on respect clearly had an impact, because the children were able to talk about it with the inspection team and explain what respect meant, and they were seen being respectful of each other and of the staff in school and visitors and equipment. That was very clear, very strong. The children were able to talk about how they can keep healthy, both mentally and physically. They could talk about healthy eating. In terms of diversity, one of the children explained that it's okay to be different. Everyone is welcomed at Windlesham. 56 of our parents responded to the parent questionnaire, and 100% of those that responded said they would recommend the school to others. And that was a really lovely thing to know, so thank you. Leadership and management was graded as good. This is what the inspection team said about leadership and management. This is a small school, but a really effective team with a clear layer of leadership from the trustees to all staff. All play a part, and the inspection team used the word collegiate, which is really important to us. That is how we work. Leaders engage well with staff well-being and their workload, and that's appreciated by staff. There's a clear vision from the head teacher about what she wants the children to achieve, and that is shared by all. Everybody told the same story. The trust and the governors are ambitious and they uphold the school's values. They know their strategic responsibility. Leaders have high expectations and ambitions, and this was tested out, along with the case for special needs children and children for whom English was an additional language. There were high expectations for those groups. In terms of the early years, we were judged good. Inspectors were very impressed with how happy and settled the children were and how well they were playing together, especially as for some of our children, they had only attended school for 4 mornings when the inspection happened. Some parents had said they were anxious about their child starting school, and they felt that the school staff had really supported them so that their child was able to make a really smooth transition to school. And that's really important to us, that that's been a real success. Inspectors saw exceptional practice in the early years. Staff were working really hard to develop the children's independence, communication, language and literacy. Personal, social and emotional development are really key, and the rules are clear. The 3 prime areas, communication and language, physical development, personal, social and emotional development, are threaded through the whole approach. The baseline is robust so that we establish what the children can do and what they need to know next, and that informs the planning for the children, so we really tailor the learning to what the children need to do to move on. Staff know how to use questioning, and the inspectors saw some really lovely examples of open-ended questioning so that the children were encouraged to talk with each other and with the adults about what they were learning and what they were practicing. Safeguarding was effective. Our vetting systems are effective. There was a culture of vigilance, and everyone knows the procedures to follow. Training identified signs of abuse and what to do if we were worried about a child. The school was fully compliant. Safeguarding was effective. What was really important to us is that the children shared that they feel safe when they're in school, and they knew they could talk to any one of the grown-ups if they were worried about anything, and they were confident that we would do something to help them. So this is the judgment that is the hardest to digest. The quality of education overall requires improvement. So to explain how we got to that judgment, we had a deep dive in history and computing. That means that the inspection team focus on history and computing as a way of testing out whether a school is able to explain why they teach what they teach and how this fits in with what the children have learnt before and what they will go on to learn in subsequent years. For computing, we use the purple mash scheme of work, which gives a clear structure to what we teach when, with clear progression as the children move through the school. For history, we moved away from using a published scheme some years ago because we wanted to write our own planning, our own scheme of work for history and other subjects like geography. Over the last 2 years, we've thought a great deal about what we're teaching when, how we will organise our topics. Last year we operated mixed age classes, and this year we reverted back to a single year in a single class. This has led us to put a lot of time into redesigning our curriculum, choosing topics carefully and operating a 2-year rolling programme so that children don't repeat topics as they go through the school. As teachers, we've spent a lot of time together talking about the topics we want to teach and how that fits with all of the subjects that we teach in school. We want the children to make progress in all subjects every year. What we were not able to do for the inspectors satisfaction was explain our thinking behind our curriculum, essentially explaining why we taught the Great Fire of London and why we taught it in the autumn. For example, how that helped the children develop their understanding of history as things that have happened in the past. With so much change over the last 2 years, we had identified that documentation needed working on this year to clearly lay out what we're teaching, when and why. The inspection team felt that subjects like history and art were not as well planned as the core subjects like maths and computing. So they have told us we need to make sure that all of the subjects are explained in terms of our overriding aims, the layers of planning, which show how we sequence the learning to build on prior knowledge from previous years, what sticky knowledge we want the children to remember, retain and use again. The CEO and the other schools of Tamat are supporting this approach in terms of how it's going to be used in school. The inspection team made it clear that our curriculum plan needs to be sequential, with key knowledge in all subjects identified in more detail than we had done when they came to inspect. We knew this was something we had to work on. We'd already started work on this, but the documentation was not yet in place when the inspection happened. And this is what was said. In any inspection, the team will listen to some children read, and for our inspection, they were particularly interested in children who've been finding reading difficult. They used this to test out our approach to reading and systematic synthetic phonics. They felt that the books that those children were reading, that the children that were really struggling with their reading, really need to match much more closely to the sounds that they already know, so that they're able to read more quickly and more fluently. We've already done something about that, making sure that those children that really struggle with their reading have phonics books that really match the sounds that they can use to decode words. We have a new assessment system, and we need to embed this new assessment process. We've worked with the other Tamat schools over the last 2 years to make sure it's how we want it, but of course that's on our school development plan and needs to be embedded. It's a new assessment system. They weren't going to see that embedded in week 2. Our use of assessment was clarified during the inspection, but it was very, very new, and we know that this work is ongoing. Just giving you enough time to read the slide. So the key question, of course, is why? Why were we deemed to be requires improvement for our curriculum when we've spent so much time thinking and talking about it as teachers? Well, we feel it's because we've had a lot of change in the last 2 years. We had mixed stage classes, and then we reverted back to single classes this year. In the last 2 years, we've prioritised the children's emotional development and given them academic support to make sure that after the disruption of COVID, we've really supported the children to come back to school and get back into good learning habits and be successful at school and enjoy their learning. One of the requirements is that we track on paper how our curriculum has changed during this time. We've actually spent a lot of time on our curriculum, and we didn't want to rely on buying in a scheme. We wanted to write it ourselves. Whilst our teaching staff know all of our pupils and what they're learning and what we think they need to learn next, we hadn't documented this sequence to the level required. The government have reviewed the teaching of phonics nationally, and the deadline for rollout of a comprehensive phonics scheme is April 2022. The inspectors felt that the books some of our children were reading should focus on a few key sounds at a time to reflect the upcoming changes, but also to really match the children's phonics ability. We had already begun to evaluate a new phonics programme, and we've chosen a new scheme called Essential Letters and Sounds. New resources are being delivered, and staff will complete their training on how to teach the new scheme so that we're ready to start this in earnest in January. So the important thing for you to know is that we are doing something about it. We felt that the judgment was harsh. We were already working on our curriculum documentation, and we don't feel we were given the judgment we truly deserved. And so the key question is, what are we doing about it? Well, we have a clear timeline. For the autumn term, it's about giving our curriculum documentation a real overhaul, making sure it has the detail that was missing when the inspection team came, and choosing a new phonics scheme, which we've done already. We'll undergo our training in the last few weeks of this term to make sure that come January, as we start a new phase of phonics teaching, we can introduce the children to the new Essential Letters and Sounds scheme. It's a lovely scheme with resources online, e-books as well as real books, some lovely resources to use in the classroom. And it's really key that we share that with you and get started on that in January. And I'm sure we'll share another video or have a workshop to explain the changes that you'll see in the children's reading scheme. For the spring, we had planned to have an external review in the first week of October. All of the TAMAT schools wanted an external advisor to come and visit the school to test out our teaching and learning, to look at our curriculum documentation and see was it robust. And we'd planned that for October. Given that we were Ofsteded in September, we have moved this to February. It'll be Friday the 25th of February 2022. We'll have an external advisor come and watch lessons, do a deep dive in a subject, listen to children read, review our teaching of the new phonics scheme and give us feedback. And of course, we will share that feedback with you. I really want you to know that we've got an external view and advice, and that we are following that advice that's given. In spring too, so after February half term, we'll have the phonics scheme in full swing, and we'll be monitoring the impact of that. We want to make sure that this is really helping the children learn phonics better and use it better in their reading. All of our curriculum documentation will be in place, so that means having a long-term plan, a medium-term plan, sticky knowledge, and our assessment all aligned, so that when there is a deep dive into a subject, we can really explain that. Then we would be looking at having another Ofsted. I'd be inviting Ofsted to come back in the summer next year, because I really want to make sure that we get the judgment we deserve. So I'd like to thank you for listening to me talk. I'd like to thank you for your interest in our school and for engaging this with us. If you have any questions, I would welcome the chance to talk that through with you. What was really important to us in the inspection was that we felt our family support in the inspection, and that means a great deal to us. So I would hope, moving forward, we continue to have your support and your encouragement and your understanding and your trust. So if you have any concerns, please come and see me. Please talk it through with us. I really want to work with you. Thank you.